If you think that all Damascus steels are equal, prepare to see something today that will blow your mind. This is a Cabot 1911 we call the Diablo Damascus, made from the most extraordinary pattern welded steel by artist Jason Morrissey. One of the great pleasures that I have here at Cabot is working with some of the greatest craftsmen in the world. Back in 2014, 2015, I came across the work of an artist named Jason Morrissey. Jason's based in Maine. He's a multimedia artist. He works in steel, he works in glass, he works in jewelry. And the moment I saw a piece of Damascus from him, I had to look at it very, very hard and carefully.
I remember the Diablo Damascus very well because we released that in 2019, shortly after I came on board doing the sales and marketing here at Cabot, and I was blown away. It was the first project that we did, the first pistol we made that was fully from Morrissey, Jason Morrissey steel in the slide and the grips, and I'd never seen anything like it before. The way the pattern was that he was able to elicit out of the steel that had large portions, so it was a very large pattern, but it also had a lot of intricate details in it. And then you take that and you match it with the way our guys were able to finish it, where they did a very deep etch on it to where when you feel that surface of the steel, you can actually feel, just like on, our Apocalypse or our bedside, you feel ridges, you feel the difference. And then to take that contrast and to have the lows be black and the highs be polished on the stainless parts, it was just very, very crazy. And the cool thing about it is that really is a one of a kind. I know everything we do is one of a kind, but that is very, very one of a kind, because the specific way that he was able to make that billet and make it work, we have not been able to replicate.
When you're building a gun like the Diablo, you really have to take a lot more time in the building and, crafting of it, because you can't just go out and say, hey, give me another slide, because there's one. There's only one, and you have to make sure that it's working as well as possible in that gun. So you're fitting stuff by hand and making sure that every little piece is exactly where it needs to be. And sometimes that, takes 2-3 times as long, but it's all worth it in the end.
Another thing to highlight with this particular piece is that, it's one of one. This particular pattern was made and forged and welded just for Cabot Guns to use. The time and effort that goes into making something like this it's impossible to replicate, right? So we have to get it right. We have to take our time, put enough planning into it to really be able to execute a piece like this and get a really cool product out of it.
Once in a while, an artist will come along and push a medium into aspects of design, possibilities which have never been seen before. And Jason is one of those artists. If you take a look at the style within the Damascus, this is called pattern welding. And what is very magical are the patterns that Jason imagines will construct, stack, forge weld, and build into the Damascus itself. In working with Damascus, you have to look at the material as one of the base considerations as to the rarity, the complexity, the workability of it. So, you know, here is a recent piece of Damascus we received from Jason. Anytime we receive a piece of this, it's like Christmas, so it's a very rare piece of Damascus. The size is large. It's bespoke, and creating a singular piece like this with art in it is really, really extraordinary and rare. And importantly, Jason has a unique style. So like anything, there's levels in Damascus steel. So you can simply take different types of steel, stack them together. Maybe you can twist them, you know, you can compress them. But making deliberate designs and then pushing that design into really artistic patterns is like the highest possibility in the artistic creation of steels, which are truly unique, truly complicated to work in that medium, and very aesthetic in terms of the items that you see, the pattern that you see in that steel. You know, we described this gun as a Diablo Damascus because it's kind of magical when you see something that hasn't been done in an art form. You know, we referred back to, you know, Robert Johnson with the blues and making a deal with the devil. And like, you know, you go somewhere where, you know, from nowhere becomes a new way of doing something, a new possibility of expressing it. And Jason's work is at that level of transformational art in terms of Damascus steel, the patterning that you'll see in the steel, the complexity of it, and the deliberate nature in which it's created.
The first thing you're going to notice when you look at Diablo Damascus is obviously the big, bold pattern on it. Now, this has its own set of challenges when it comes to machining. Typically, when you're machining like layered Damascus or folded Damascus that has a really tight pattern or somewhat consistent pattern through it, you don't really notice much in the way of tool deflection. And what that means is when you have something like an end mill that's pressing up against the material, it will respond accordingly and cut some of that material away. With this, you'll go from one surface area that could be soft for an inch or so, and then hit another material that's harder, and it will actually push your tooling out away from it, and then it'll come back in for the other parts. So from a machining aspect, a lot of what we experience is like more noticeable tool deflection. There are certain things that we have to accommodate for with a pattern that's as big and bold like this to make sure that everything stays within its appropriate dimensions.
This pistol is a single pistol build. We completed it in 2018, so this is a few years back. And in working with that material, you have one opportunity. So machining unique Damascus steel, as you'll hear more of in this video, is a challenge. You're not sure how it's going to cut. It's not like regular steel. You're not sure how it will finish. So all these challenges are part of a larger project to make a singular custom 1911, and at the pinnacle of the possibility of the quality of the material of the Damascus that will be employed in that build.
The Diablo pistol was, I think, the first time that we actually scaled back some of our ambition in order to make certain other aspects of the Damascus pop. That was one where, we thought we were going to be doing some crazy polish on the frame. We were going to kind of do this sort of good and evil sort of, bright versus dark sort of thing. And when we got to work on that slide and it started to come to life, we were like, we don't want to do anything to this gun to distract from the material. So we sent Rob some pictures, and at the time it was just on like a bead blast frame. He was like, that is absolutely perfect. And since then we've been able to humble ourselves sometimes and say, you know what, we were going to do this crazy stuff with some of the other parts, things that we love to do on other builds, but in this particular instance, this material demands all of our attention, and rather than doing all this other stuff to the small parts and the frame or any of the parts that happen to not be Damascus on that project that we would find distracting, we just let the slide, the grips, any of the Damascus parts have all of the attention.
I think something that surprised us in the machine shop when this gun was finished and coming back for us to look at for the first time was just how cool the rounds on the top turned out. Like, sometimes it's serendipitous how these materials present themselves, and to have the really cool patterns on the side into like a much tighter pattern that really reveal itself across the rounds, and you get to see the different layers and dimensions of that, just turned out really stunning. I think we're all surprised by the contrast of the material and just how well it flowed on this platform of a 1911.
One thing that's always kind of in the back of your mind when you're working on these projects, especially with finishing kind of being the end of the line, is just how much investment there is into the product up to that point. So there's a little bit of weight on your shoulders, and you want to make sure not only that you respect the material and it turns out the way that everybody's hoping that it will, but also that you don't make any mistakes that you've made 1,000 times over. So it's one of those things where you have to just hopefully have put in the reps, know what you're doing, trust the process, and do what you do without getting too nervous. So you have to sort of not overthink it, but at the same time, you are always a little bit nervous because you know exactly how much time. Some of these billets are years in the making from the blacksmith. Then they come to the machine shop and they'll pour over these things for weeks just before they even make the first cut so that they can get everything lined up and approach it correctly. And then they hand it off to you and everything is in place for you, and all you have to do is carry it to the finish line. So if you were to make a small mistake at that point in the process, it would be pretty devastating.
Specifically in finishing the grips on the Diablo, I remember it being a very intimate experience because I'm there as close as I can be to those grips, spending as much time as it takes, polishing by hand, going through various grits and compounds to make sure that those grips look as perfect as possible.
The way Diablo was finished with the two-tone black and stainless, it's really something special because I'll see that on other guns that we do, but to have the large black portions interrupted with medium parts of stainless in the steel in that Damascus pattern is truly unique. So the way it was finished off, Diablo was a perfect name for it because it has that light and dark contrast in it. And I mean, if we could do that again, we definitely would, but it is a one of a kind.
The Diablo Damascus 1911 helped us further see what the boundaries and possibilities were in working with Damascus Steel in the 1911. We delivered this fine project to its owner in 2019, and in that process, when we deliver a gun like this, we do special touches. So in this instance, a special book was made on the gun that the owner has for provenance, as well as a special case. This is an example of what we call our oak builds, which is an acronym for one of a kind. And if you like this kind of thing, you can find a oak page on our website with this and many other unique custom projects at cabotguns.com.
Thank you for watching this video on the Diablo Damascus. If you want to be notified when we release new videos like this, please hit the subscribe button now.